What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Fierce Framework podcast, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm a business coach with a passion to see women breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and to start living life more on our own terms. I believe the world benefits when women are living lives that we're lit up about and we're pursuing a purpose that makes us feel fulfilled. My goal with this podcast is to share inspiration, stories of other entrepreneurs just like you, and practical tools and tips to help you become fierce in your business. If that sounds good to you, you're going to love this episode. Let's get down to it. What's up, gorgeous? Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework. We are quickly approaching year end and I want to talk about it. I am hosting my second annual Plan Your Year workshop for local entrepreneurs in Colorado Springs. And so it's got me thinking about planning and all the things that go into that and like planning out a year and the steps that are helpful to take before that. So since we've got a ways to go, we're not in the new year yet, but time, I just have a feeling like the rest of this year is gonna fly by. So I am working on personally like laying the foundation, what needs to happen for me to be like ready to really start thinking about what's coming up in this new year. And in my experience, like one of the best ways to set you up for that is to take a second and reflect on the last year and what's been going on. So, I want to talk about resting, reflecting, and realigning. If you've been around for a while, you know resting, doing less, slacking off. Those are some of my favorite topics. Specifically, I want to talk about resting in the sense of like taking a beat. I really just used it instead of like pausing because it starts with an R. So, we're working on that, everything matching. But in order to, we have to allow ourselves the time and space to even like be able to consider where we've been, what's been going on, how we feel about last year, to assess whether we've met our goals or not, to remember what those goals were, to recall those times where like we had a goal but we decided to pivot because something more aligned came along, or maybe something less aligned but it felt more pressing in the moment. Whatever that is, like all of that takes time and energy. And so step one, right, is to like create that space in your life to take some time and consider like what happened last year? Where did the time go? How is it already November? All those important questions, right? So, step one, right, is rest or pause. Like, take some time to take stock and consider, like, think back on the last year. I did a similar episode to this last year as well. And so that has a little bit more. This isn't going to be exactly the same. You're welcome. But if you want like more, maybe like a different perspective, then I would encourage you to check that out. One of the things I did like about that, because I re-listened to it and I was like, was this valuable? Was this good? Like, should I continue this like trend? Like, should I use this topic again? And not to toot my own horn, but I was like, okay, not bad. She made some points. She made some points. And one of the things I did like is that I was prepared, yay, with a couple ideas of like, this can look different. Personally, I love journaling. I love taking some time. I love a warm beverage and a candle and just like writing things out. Sometimes some people prefer pen and paper. Sometimes it's easier to type. It could look like just talking it through with a friend, right? Or maybe even a group of friends and kind of reminiscing, especially if you're like close and you experienced a lot of the year together. Every different person has a different perspective and like different things are going to be highlighted to each different individual. So like together or like a family, right? So together that can kind of help you remember things that you didn't originally think of. Sometimes voice recording instead of like writing things out can be a valuable way to kind of like verbally process. Um, Yeah, those are kind of the things that come to mind. But whatever it looks like for you, it doesn't have to be pen to paper. It doesn't have to be journaling. It doesn't have to look the way it looks for anybody else. Do what works for you. But I want to encourage you to take some time and just like give yourself that space to think about what this last year has looked like. And of course, like I want you to especially be intentional about celebrating your wins. Like, what were the things that worked out for you? What were some accomplishments that you had? Um, what were some of the goals that you met? Like, what did you learn? How did you grow? And making sure that you're like highlighting, giving yourself credit for those things, because those things are so important. There's always going to be failures. There's always going to be trip ups. There's always going to be situations where we're like, I don't know, or we handled it poorly, could have done better, or whatever. That's always going to be there. And we can learn from those as well. Those are very important. And make sure that you're celebrating those wins and giving yourself credit where you did well, because it can be really easy to focus on all the ways that we feel like we fell short or wish we would have done better, all that type of thing. So once you're like kind of looking back and considering what happened last year, what did we do? What went well? What didn't go well? What goals did I hit? Which ones did I miss? Which ones was I like, actually, I don't really want to do that anymore and kind of pivoted. Take note of those things and consider like how does that feel to you? Like what's going on there? What's what is that bringing up for you? Are there things you need to work through? Are there things you need to grieve? Are there things you need to celebrate? These, like, just kind of getting into it and giving yourself the space, to, like, really look at it and be like, how was this year? I keep saying last year. Like, how was this year? Like, how did it go? How do I feel about it? And during that time, I want you to think, for me, I'm like kind of visual and I love graphs, so this doesn't work for everybody. But like the way I think of it is I kind of look back on the last year and I'm like, okay, so based on this trajectory of like how I'm going, if this were like plotted on a graph and I could kind of see the trend of from where I was to where I am now, where am I headed? Like if I stay on this path, where is it taking me? Because so often, like, we get put on a path, and sometimes that's just like by our parents or by like a choice that we made that we didn't realize was going to have such a powerful impact. Sometimes we just like fall into default mode and like somebody else puts us on a path. Sometimes we realize we've been on a path way longer than we ever planned on, and maybe it's working out and maybe it's not. So I want you to consider like what is this path that I've been on? And do I like where it's headed? If I keep going where I've been going, if I keep doing what I've been doing, am I going to like where I end up? Like, do I want to end up where I'm headed? And that is such a critical question. And we're going to get into it a little bit more when we talk about realign. But that's one of the biggest questions because I think so often we get sucked into the day to day and we're just trying to keep up and we're just trying to keep our head above water and we're like treading water, fighting for our lives, right? We're in survival mode. Side note, I'm talking about like theoretically like mental survival mode. I'm not talking literal survival mode. Like some of us don't have the luxury or capacity to like really take a step back and so I'm not trying to brush off anybody's like serious situation. There's privilege in this conversation of being able to take time and take a step back and take stock. So when I'm talking about survival mode, I'm like kind of like physiologic, no, psychologically, where you're just like you're kind of like you feel like a rat on a wheel, right? And it's so easy to just get wrapped up in the day to day and feel like you can't stop and you just need to keep going and you got to stay on the hamster wheel, right? Because you feel like if you step off the hamster wheel, all these plates you have in the air are going to come crashing down, and they might, but it can also take a minute to realize which plates matter and which ones don't. So, if you're able, if you have capacity, I would highly recommend taking a rest, taking a pause, and kind of assessing what has been going on this year. Do you like where it's headed? Do you want to keep going there or do you want to do something different? Right. And so this flows right into reflecting. We've already kind of talked about it, right? Asking yourself questions. And I thought about like bringing a list, but I think it really just depends on what's important to you and like what you're trying to ask yourself. If you're really like pulling a blank, you can actually Google like reflection questions, and there's a ton of like great articles. People have like whole blogs and like classes and stuff about it. So like you can easily find it. But just like asking some of those things we talked about earlier, like what went well, what didn't go well, what did you learn? And basically trying to figure out like who are you becoming? Who did you become this year? Because we're always growing and we're always changing, right? So when you're looking back, you're like, who am I becoming? What version of myself did I become this year? And who am I on track to become? And is that the person I want to be? Or is that not a direction I want to go in? And I need to make some changes and be intentional about where I'm going. So, sorry, ADHD got me. So, what we were talking about earlier, right, is it's so easy to kind of go into default mode or to get on some path without even really considering the significance of the path or even the end result of like where you're going. So a lot of this boils down to let's be intentional about where our lives are taking us. Because you can live your whole life following somebody else's instructions, following somebody else's directions, right? Going wherever people are telling you you should go. There's not a shortage of people's opinions and ideas on what you should be doing and where you should be going, right? So it's important to make sure that you're considering and taking that time to be like, hey, is this where I want to go? Are my steps in alignment with my purpose, in alignment with my values, in alignment with my vision of where I want to end up? You have to be intentional about making sure like those baby steps are adding up to the journey that you want your life to take, because like one of the biggest things like I hear over and over, like one of the biggest realizations that people have is they realize they're on a path going somewhere they don't want to go. And I don't think that like not everyone, it can be hard to have that realization because it's not something that's always talked about. And it can be easy to kind of go with the default and think that's what you're supposed to do. You go with the flow, you do what everybody's doing, like that's what you're supposed to do. Everybody's doing it. And whatever that is, like whatever the norm is for your family or for your society or whatever, right? It's like high school, college, get married, have kids, like, and you think that like that's normal and everybody's doing that, and so you don't always, it's not always easy to like take a step back and be like, wait. It took me a while to realize like I didn't want kids. Like for the longest time, I have 8 siblings, right? So for the longest time I was like, I want to be a homeschool mom with a lot of kids because that's what my mom was. Like that's the example that I had available to me, and I thought that's what I wanted. And as I matured and started thinking for myself, I was like, that is absolutely not what I want, not even a little bit. And I just discovered, learned whatever, like, I actually don't want children. And so, night and day, right? So, it is so powerful to make sure we're taking that step back and be like, wait, where is this path going? Do I want to go here? Am I on this path intentionally? Or is there something more aligned with where I want to end up, where I can make sure these baby steps that I'm taking, these daily habits that I'm building are actually in alignment with somewhere I want to be? So rest, reflect, realign, right? Once you're asking yourself these questions and you're like, who am I becoming? Who do I want to be? Are those the same person? Is that headed in the same direction? Or am I a little bit like over here and I want to bring it back? Or maybe I want to pivot or redirect or whatever that is. So I want us to be intentional about figuring out where we want to go, what we want our baby steps to build up to, and ask yourself questions like, what do you want to let go of? Like, what do you want to leave in 2025? What are the things, what's some baggage that you want to drop off? What are some plates that you want to let fall? What are some things you want to take off your plate, let go of, whatever that is? And that can be anything, right? Like that can be going to therapy to like literally let go of baggage, trauma, working through things that you've been carrying so that you're able to let them go in a healthy way. That can be letting go of relationships that are like hurting you. That can be letting go of obligations, random responsibilities that you've taken on, like whatever that is. I want you to consider, what do you want to let go of? And one of the beautiful things about that is it makes more space. And so whether you're overcrowded, overloaded, whatever, or even if you're doing okay, but you want space for something new, right? Letting those things go creates more space. And whether that's just space to breathe, which is so important, because letting something go doesn't mean you have to take on something new. So, whether that's just room to breathe or being able to move into a season of rest, doing a little bit less, or if that's intentionally taking something off your plate so that you can put something else on it, regardless, letting go is a beautiful thing. And when you let go and then you look at what's left and the things that are left on your plate, on your heart, like in your life, and your obligations and your calendar, those things, when those things are in alignment with like what you want to be doing and who you want to be and your values, that is so empowering. Like that is such a reassuring reality to be able to look at what you're doing and what you're keeping and be like, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. This is getting me where I want to go. Like, that's so cool. And especially in contrast with like, so many people aren't that intentional about their lives and where they're going. And so it's really this like empowering, like, dang, bro, like you really feel like you're taking the reins of your life because you are. So, along with like letting things go, be cognizant of the things that you want to keep as well, because it's, I think it's also important to like value what we are hanging on to and when we're choosing to put energy into things. Like I have this group, we meet once a week and it's a social get together, and sometimes I'm like, dang dude, every week, or like I'm not always the most social person, if you know you know. But then I'm like, I'm doing this on purpose because I care about these people and I want to pour into them. And there are things that are worth doing that still deplete you. There are things that are worth doing where you're tired after, right? Think about an athlete, right? You, when they're running a race, when they're training, like they are tired, they're depleted, they're leaving it all on the field, on the court, whatever, right? Like it's not all sunshine and rain. Like it's hard, it's depleting, they're exhausted. That's okay. It's not bad to do things that tire you. I think sometimes like we kind of move a little too far in one direction or the other when we get into like self-care or boundaries, and it can be so easy to start feeling like I shouldn't do anything that uses up my energy, or I shouldn't do anything that like wears me down or is tiring. Not necessarily. We want to be intentional about it and you want to be cognizant, okay? And you don't want to be burning yourself out. But there are things that if it's in alignment with your values, right? If it's getting you where you want to go and you are pouring yourself into it and you're depleted at the end, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You do want to make sure you're replenishing and you're pouring back into yourself, right? Of course. But the fact that something it takes from you is not automatically like a no-go. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. Go do anything, right? Go to the gym, go pour into somebody else. And sometimes like, and I think this is where it's easy to get like convoluted, is because sometimes when you're pouring into somebody else, you feel it in yourself. You know, you do something kind, helpful for another person, sometimes you instantly feel filled up as well. And so it can be easy to be like, well, that's how it should always be. Let's not get too far into that. But sometimes it's like when you're an athlete and you are putting it all out there. and you are working hard, and at the end, like, you're tired. And yes, there hopefully, ideally, there's that feeling of accomplishment. And so that's also like a filling up in a different way. But it's okay to pour our energy out. Okay, I'm way down the rabbit hole. We're bringing it back. Okay, so when we're talking about realignment, I want us to think about like what are we letting go? What are we keeping? And like where are you? When we're talking about who are you becoming, who have you become in this year, where are you at now in your journey? Like, are you in the middle of a path that you want to keep going on? Are you just now pivoting and kind of catching a crossroad and now you're in the middle of another path? Or maybe you're starting at the beginning of a different path and you feel like you're starting over, even though, you're not really, because you still have all that past experience and all those accomplishments and all the things that you've learned. But maybe you're at a trailhead, right? And you're at the beginning of a new path. Wherever that is, again, awareness, cognizance, like be aware of where that is and what step you're on so that we know like what are we focusing on next. One of the things I love to talk about is like you need to know where you are in order to know where that next step is. And last year I used this example like kind of house building, right? Like maybe this year you were laying a foundation, right? Well, once the foundation is laid, you're not going to keep needing foundation laying tools and habits, right? Now you're going to need to move on to something else. So maybe you're, I don't know, putting the structure up and you need scaffolding. Or maybe you've done that and you're ready to hang drywall, right? Those are different skills, those are different tools, it's different materials. So when we're aware of like where we're at and what we're working on, what's next, it can help us be more aware of to consider what tools do I need now? What habits, what routines do I need? What materials do I need? What support do I need? Like, what things do I need to go out and learn now? Because it's not going to be the same as this year because you're growing and you're changing and you're moving on. So you're going to need new things in order to do the new work. And that's totally normal and that's okay, right? I also want to comment because, like, I'm not super, what am I trying to say? I don't care about dates. Like, this doesn't have to be something you do at the beginning of the year. Am I bandwagoning? Absolutely. Like, if it's January and people want to plan, then that's the time I'm gonna jump on and be like, let's plan in January. Okay. But like, you can do this whenever. You can do it right now. You can do it every month, right? You can do it every week. I have gotten in the habit actually where I like to just take a second and it's not nearly like as in depth as this, but just a couple of minutes to be like, all right, what did I do last week? And some of that is just like for my own like confidence boosting, like, to remind myself that I didn't do nothing. Because sometimes when you just go off the feeling or the emotions of the last week, it can be really easy to tell yourself like I didn't do anything. I didn't get anything done. I just wasted last week. And that's not always true. So it can be helpful to like put this into practice and tying back to celebrating your wins, right? To get in the habit of like looking back and be like, no, I did do that. I got that thing done. I had this really meaningful interaction or conversation, or, I did this thing that I feel really good about, or I took this day off and had a day to relax and I felt really good about that. And like that really filled me up. Just working this into kind of our routines and into our lives where we're taking a second to see like, how did that go? Because if you, there's, Kathy Heller talks about this and I love it so much. She talks about like a ship and when they're on course, it's like a 1 or 2 degree difference can, depending on how long the trip is, right? Over time, it adds up. And if you're 1 or 2 degrees off, you can end up like in a different country, right? In a different continent, depending on how far you're going. And so the more often that we're kind of recalibrating and realigning, the less time you're going to waste like off track. And I want you to take that with a grain of salt because I am a huge fan of, as the kids say, doing it for the plot. And I'm ADHD AF. So side quests are life. Okay. So I'm not trying to say that anything you do that's like a little out of routine or not perfectly aligned with everything you thought your life was going to look like is a waste or a bad thing. But as things go on, we can start developing like habits that aren't good for us without even really like knowing it. Like for the longest time, I just got into the habit of after work, like just having a glass of wine and turning on the TV, like, and then like watching TV for like hours. And then it was like, this is not what I want to be doing. And so then working on acknowledging that and be like, okay, how can I get more in alignment with what I want to be doing? Right. And that can look different for everybody else. And are there still nights when I want to have a glass of wine and watch TV for hours? Yes. And I do because like I'm being intentional and that's what I want. And like that's what I feel like not need, that's extreme, but like that's what I feel like I need in that moment, right? So it's completely different and I think so often like the intention is as important or even more important than like what it is you're doing. So when we're working this into and we're not waiting until January to take a step back and be like, do I like my life? Is this what I want to keep doing? Like, do I want to go where I'm headed? When we kind of build those rest periods and those pauses more into our routines or into our habits where it's more frequent, then that gives us just more of a chance to be intentional and aware and take a pause and be like, I'm doing this a lot. Is this what I want? And if it is, fine. Or if it's like, hey, I'm just in a season where it's like, I just need this. I just need to be able to check out or like whatever. Okay. But taking that second to check in with yourself and be like, hey, is this working for me? Is this what I want to do? Is this helping me become the person I want to be? It just creates an opportunity for you to go, actually, I'd rather be doing this. It's like, all right, bet, let's make that happen. Let's do it. Whereas if you never pause and ask yourself that question, then you're so far down the road before something triggers you to take a step back and be like, wait, what's going on here? Where am I? Do I want to be here? So, anyway, I want to all that to say, I want to encourage you that like this doesn't have to be a January thing. This doesn't have to be an annual thing. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the year. It can be whenever. It doesn't have to be quarterly either. It could be literally whenever. But yeah, I think it can benefit us at any time. So don't get too hung up on the calendar year, on the new year, on New Year, New You, all that BS. Don't worry about it. But there's also not really a bad time to remind ourselves that, hey, you can take time for yourself and you can be intentional about where you're going with your life. All right, so rest, reflect, realign. If you are in the Springs and you want to come to my planning event, I would absolutely love to have you. I have more information. I'm going to link it in the description. If you have any questions or if anything's unclear, like, please let me know. As you know, I am a huge fan of like minimal viable product, like good enough, get it out there because otherwise I would be obsessing about it for like 5 years and I would never have a workshop. Okay. So, yes, I felt like it was good. I put it out there. If you have feedback, I'm totally open to it. If something like isn't clear or doesn't make sense, please let me know because I think communication is so important. Other than that, you already know I love to hear from you. So if you're gonna come or you want the link or like whatever, have questions, hit me up at the Fierce Framework on social media channels. And my email is confidence at thefierceframework.net. All right. Well, I will see you so soon. I have a surprise episode coming up with me and two friends, so that'll be exciting. That should be dropping pretty soon. And yeah, can't wait to see you next time. Until then, keep becoming fierce.